Hello and welcome to this week's Ezira Hangout number 18 with your host Harrison McLean. Today is August the 5th and let's jump into the project updates. But first, what is Ezira? Ezira is a protocol for blockchain social media with a decentralized exchange and a peer-to-peer marketplace. Users can make posts on boards, groups, or profiles, and they can encrypt them to make them private. Businesses can create crypto assets to represent voting power and distribute revenue in addition to a wide variety of other use cases. Merchants can list products for sale and receive free and virtually instant payments from customers. Users earn rewards when they post valuable content, earn tips, and can charge micropayments to access premium content. Supernodes earn rewards for providing file storage through IPFS. The Ezira protocol itself earns revenue for all of its asset holders by selling account membership, post-promotion, and charging trading fees. Every Ezira interface can choose which content to display and how to sort it. The protocol has no censorship. Users can choose which identity to use for posting, whether it's their full profile account or their persona account or anonymously. Azzurri users and applications that create accounts for new users earn an ongoing share of the revenue from those users. So that pretty much sums up what Azzurri is. It is a blockchain-based network for social media. So this week's project updates, we have the 5 major release stages of Azera have been summarized in a new series of graphics for project timeline clarity. Each one explains a different release stage, starting from the testnet to the alpha mainnet, the public beta mainnet, complete mainnet, and polished ecosystem. Each one has a different color code. The Azera pitch deck has just been added to Ezira.io. So the pitch deck that was delivered at the first Azera meetup a couple of weeks ago is now available on Ezira.io with a few updates, including a graphic that visually describes the Azera revenue model. And some updates about the preliminary ICO. The Azera limit order price has increased to 75 cents. So that's the price at which new Azera enters the supply. So that's the price where the Azera main account is selling new Azera, and the other prices below that are the market trading price for all of the Azera that is already on the market. Only 4 weekly auctions remain before the completion of the preliminary ICO. The weekly auction this week will not have any minimum price, and all 10,000 Azera will be distributed to bidders. After the preliminary ICO is finished, no more Ezira will be distributed until the main ICO. So that's several months away. The date of commencement of the main ICO will be announced to coincide with the Pioneer release, which is the main testnet release. It's where all of the testnet features are built in. And next up on the agenda this week, we have the Hangout thread review. So let's go and review this week's Hangout thread. This week's Hangout thread had over 880 upvotes and included a new revenue model graphic, which I'll be explaining a bit later. It describes all of the different income streams that contribute value to the Azera ecosystem in a very user-friendly and clear way. So this week's comments, we have Tumatanzi, who says Steam is going to be listed on Coinbase. Great. So that's great for the Steam ecosystem, and it's great for decentralized social media in general, because Steam is obviously the pioneer of the decentralized social media paradigm, and that'll be the blockchain that Steam is going to be, that Azera will be basing its code base on. So if Steam can be listed on Coinbase, it'll be a much easier process to get Azera and Azera's assets listed on Coinbase when it is created. We have Search New, who has said, Xero is one of the best decentralized exchanges, and this blockchain worked social media and so many offering. That's a bit of garbled English there. Okay, so next up we have the Hangout comment this week, all about the distribution of bitshares and Azera. So every week we have a comment on the Hangout thread that people can post their bitshares addresses to for the chance to win 50 bitshares and 50 Azera. So what we'll do is we'll count the amount of comments that are posted onto this comment here. We've got 1, 2. So there's 5 on the main thread there, and 6. Looks like 14 bitshares addresses in the comments so far. Yeah, that appears to be 14 entries this week, so some of those kind of upvoted because there were only 12 upvotes. So if the winner has not upvoted this comment, they are not eligible to win the reward, unfortunately. So quite a few have. So what we'll do is we'll do a random distribution between 1 and 14. I think there have been a few double ups as well. There have been, that's 1 duplicate, I think. So we won't count the duplicate entry there. Okay, so we'll do a random draw between 1 and 13, not counting the duplicate entry. Please only do 1 entry into the competition. Otherwise it makes things not as easy and not as fair. So between 1 and 13, and we will pick the 5th number, so 1. Fifth number is number 13. So not counting the duplicate entry. Seven, 8, 9, doesn't count. 10. 13. The 13th entry is Alex Gautam 32. So Alex 32. We'll check if they upvoted the comment. Alex 32, very good, is our winner this week of 50 Azera and 50 bitshares. To the bitshares account of Alex Gautam 32. Alex Gautam 32. Address is not quite working. We'll just see if we can get that to work. There it is. Alex Gautam 32 is this week's winner of 50 bitshares and 50 Azera. Congratulations. And 50 Azera. Very good. Congratulations, Alex Gautam, 32. Next up, we'll go through the rest of the Hangout thread and see if there were some more points brought up. Okay, so we had a few interesting questions this week. We have what thing makes Azera different from Steemit? As we're already using Steemit, what's new in this platform? So what makes Azera different from Steemit is that Azera will be rewarding the views of posts in addition to votes. And Azera's main interface will allow the sorting algorithms to be customized by changing the parameters used in the sorting algorithm. Azera will provide cryptocurrency rewards to file hosts on IPFS, and most importantly, Azera will be including a built-in decentralized exchange with user-issued assets and a peer-to-peer marketplace with built-in mediation systems for exchanging products and services. So those are a few things that make the Azera project different from Steemit. However, Azera will be using the very powerful Steem blockchain software as a basis point for developing the Azera protocol. We have a pretty similar question here from Crypto Advisor. What new things? I think that question's been answered. Then we have 4 questions here. First of which is, what is the total supply of coin? So there are 2 major coins in Azera. The first of which is the Azera asset, and that'll have a limited supply of 10 million coins. So Azera will have a limited supply of 10 million that is issued in the ICO series and on an ongoing basis in the annual coin offerings. And the second coin is a Azera coin, which has an uncapped supply and will be issued at a linear rate of 10 million per year. So it will have a diminishing inflation rate, but in the early stages, a fairly high inflation rate. So that asset is issued to the participants in the ecosystem, and that income is obviously bought and burned proportionately with the revenue in the network, so the supply of Azera coin will be floating according to market pressures. So the more demand for memberships and post-promotion that there is, the more Azera coin will be burned. So there's no fixed supply on Azera coin that is issued at a fixed rate of 10 million per year. Third question is there any airdrop in the later stages? So Azera has been having some competitions to sort of act like a bit of a meritocratic airdrop. And Azera will be having a share drop on all holders of Steem, bitshares, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and EOS. So those 6 coins will be receiving a share drop of a small amount of Azera when they import their accounts over onto the Azera blockchain. And when are we going to list on exchanges? Azera is already listed on the world's most powerful exchange, and that is the bitshares blockchain. So we are already listed on bitshares, and listing on other exchanges will be taking place when there is sufficient user demand from outside of the Graphene ecosystem. So bitshares is serving okay for now, and when the project grows, we will be seeking to list the Azera asset on some other exchanges. But we have no announcements to make at this time as to a timeline of listing the assets. Then we have Alfren, who said, the world of crypto is divided by 2. The first one is this centralized, which almost all tokens and other coins was here, including all the scams and bogus coins, I think that's supposed to say. Thank God that Azera decided to make it decentralized. That's right. So instead of having an Ethereum ERC20, we made a BitShares user-issued asset that can be completely exchanged using the BitShares blockchain. So there's no centralized exchange required, and there is no custodial holding of the Azera asset. So one of the large problems that influenced the decision to just trade on BitShares early on is the fact that a large incredibly large amount of EOS, in particular, is stored on exchanges. And what it does is, when you have large custodial balances being held by exchanges, it gives those exchanges significant power to vote on the mainnet blockchain. So many exchanges have voted for themselves as block producers, and they'd be able to do the same thing if the Azera asset were held custodially by exchanges. So that's why up till now we haven't been aiming to list on centralized exchanges, in addition to the large overhead costs involved in that process. Then we have Antonio, who asked, I spent a lot of time on Facebook and I gave it up to use Mines and Steem it. Is this also an open source format? So yes, Ezira and Ezira.io and all Ezira applications made by the development team will be completely open source. Then we have another question of what's new in this platform. That's what I'm here to explain, all the updates. We have Chicksy for Pay asking, I love this, how do I participate? I don't have a BitShares address, how do I get one? So it's very easy to get a BitShares address. In fact, there's a link to do it on Ezira.io on the opening landing page. You can go to Ezira.io and click Create Your Free BitShares Address. And then we get into the less useful comments. How can we participate in this event? It explains it in the thread that you just read. We have Worth Trick asking, will Azera be for Indian users? Yes, Azera will be for everyone around the world. Okay, that pretty much wraps up this week's comment thread. So now we'll head back into the Discord for some discussion topics. So does anyone have anything that they'd like to bring up in response to the things that we've just talked about, or the updates, before we move on to this week's discussion topics? In that case, we'll move along to this week's discussion topics. So first topic is Ezira boards. So for those of you who are familiar with the Ezira white paper, you'll know that an Ezira board is a blockchain object that posts can be created within. So unlike on the Steem blockchain, the Ezira blockchain will be sorted out with boards instead of just tags. So a board is created by a user, and that user then becomes the board's moderator. And the moderator has the ability to delist posts from their board by putting them in the deleted section of the board. What it doesn't do is censor the posts, it just puts them in a deleted section where they can still be accessed but not from the main board. It's also very transparent, and the content itself is not deleted. There is also the potential for posts that have been deleted to be reinstated by a higher ranked moderator on the team. So it removes the potential for mass censorship of content that is divergent from the mainstream consensus on a board, when the moderators are able to bring it back if one of them decides to remove it. So users will be able to create boards to host all types of posts about any subject, and they'll be able to moderate the boards to curate the content within it and enforce the board rules. So the major difference that helps sites like Reddit have a good quality of content is that there is a lot of rules that are in place for posts to different boards. And because all the content is separated into its subject and interests that are particular to that board, it is much more conducive to creating high quality content that goes through a few filters before it is posted out onto the subreddit in Reddit's case. So by having moderated boards in place, we'll be able to have content that is related to a specific topic and is going to be able to be within the guidelines and the rules that are in place on that board. So it's also a feature in Azera that moderators of boards earn a small percentage of the reward income of their posts, of all the posts that are placed on their board. So for the first time in any protocol, the moderators of a community forum will be able to actually benefit directly from the content rewards of the posts within them. So it's within the interests of all moderators to promote high quality content to be posted to their board, and to ensure that rules that are enforced are not enforced too heavily, and to be erring on the side of letting content through, because they will be missing out on money if they censor too many posts. So that gives moderators good reasons to enforce high quality rules that deliver high quality content, and enables them to earn an ongoing reward for the continuing production of high quality content within their curation. So it's important that users at the initial stage of the network create the boards that they're interested in moderating, and create the boards that they're interested in posting to about subjects or different projects. Will be inclined to create their own board. And unlike Steemit, each post will be attached to one major board at a time, and it can be removed from the board and placed either into a different board or into the deleted section of a board. So there will be a lot of different ways that moderators are able to manage and improve the content that is posted to their boards. So next up in this week's discussion topics are the Azera group types. So what we'll do is we'll go over to the Azera white paper for this part, where I'll tell you all about the 3 major types of groups. So on Azera there are 3 major types of groups that are used for different social structures. So it's simple to think of it in a 2 by 2 grid with like 4 squares essentially. One is read permission, and the other is write permission, and then enabled and disabled. So think of it like a 2 by 2 binary grid where read and write permissions for users are either enabled or not enabled. So we'll go on to the types of events. That's the events, so we'll go to groups. Here we go. So on Azera there will be 3 types of groups. There will be public groups, which are again blockchain objects similar to boards, where all the posts are going to be visible publicly, but submissions can only be made by approved group members, and anyone can apply to join a group, and the moderators of the group are able to accept who can join. But all the posts are visible. So that's sort of like write permissions are disabled, but read permissions are enabled. And for boards, they're both enabled. So read and write. Anyone can read and write. So anyone can post and anyone can see the content. They're completely open. Public is restricting the submitters list, but not who can read it. Then there is the next type, which is a private group, where all the posts are private and can only be viewed by approved members of the group. So the read access is essentially disabled for that, and write access is also disabled. So posts can only be made by group members, and they can only be seen by group members. So this is used for like a private group where you don't want everyone to know what you're posting, and public groups are for where all the content is available, but you need to keep track of who's making the posts. So high quality content can be posted to a broad group of people, and the moderators can restrict who is able to post. On a private group, moderators restrict who is able to see the content and who's able to post the content. But anyone can apply to join it and also find it in search results, but they can't see the content. So they can see that it exists and they can apply to join it by pressing an apply button, and they can see what its name is and its details and its metadata. Then the last type is a secret group. So a secret group, members must be invited to join it, so it's invitation only. It's like an invitation only private group where the name is also encrypted and the metadata is encrypted, so no one can find it. It's not visible in search results, and all of its details are also encrypted. And in order to join, it's not just one moderator that approves entry, it has to be approved by a majority of the group's moderators to enable anyone to join. So those are the three types of groups that are going to be enabled on Ezira, and they'll be coming in the mainnet release. So that's the silver release. So essentially, boards and groups and events are going to be pretty similar objects in terms of the code on the blockchain. They'll just be collections of people, and they'll have differing read and write permissions. In the case of an event, they'll have different metadata for the time and place of the event and who's attending and who's not attending. But for all intents and purposes, events, groups, and boards are going to be pretty similar objects on the blockchain. The only thing that will change is whether the content's encrypted for everyone and who can join and who can post and stuff like that. Groups and boards can also create their own membership assets. Well, groups rather can create membership assets that is required for everyone to burn one asset per unit of time, by default 1 month, to maintain their membership in a group, and thereby, well, in the case of a private group, maintain access to all the posts. So this content is essentially closed to a group who pays the membership fee on a predetermined time. So those are the main types of groups and some of the functionality that they have there. Then we'll get on to the next topic for this week, and that is the Ezira sorting algorithm. So the Ezira sorting algorithm is one of the most important parts of the Ezira project, and it's the part where I think Ezira makes the most innovation, even without invoking the use of decentralized and distributed blockchain technology. This is simply going to be a user interface improvement that I think has been well and truly long overdue in terms of social media, and that is customizable sorting algorithms. So these are available in the Ezira technical manual, which used to be up on the website, but it was not widely read because it is quite a bit longer than the white paper. So I'll go over one important part that I think I might add back into the white paper soon, and that is the post sorting algorithm section. So this describes exactly how users can sort their posts in the Ezira.io interface and mobile interface. And we'll just find it through here. Here we are. Okay, so essentially the Ezira sorting algorithm has basically 8 parameters. So these are the different numbers that can be customized by users, and in mainstream interfaces these will be fairly abstracted away, but for technical users they'll be able to customize all of these individually with a sliding scale. Basically there's a number for latency, which affects the relationship of the post with respect to time. The equalization factor, which manages the relationship between pure democracy, which is one account, one vote, and pure meritocracy, which is one Ezira power, one vote. Then there'll be scores associated with votes, views, shares, and comments, which weights the relative contribution of each type of engagement to the algorithm. Then there'll be the active time, which manages the balance between the time when the post was made and the time when it was last commented on. And there'll be a random factor used for random shuffling. And there's a fair bit of maths involved, but basically each of the votes, views, shares, and comments are aggregated up and normalized so that they're in units of an average account, so that they can be easily compared with one another. And then they're weighted in terms of the amount of voting power an average user has. And then they are all added together in such a way that they can easily be compared with one another, and that they'll be changed by the same relative amount to a change in its in its variance number, so the view rank, the vote rank, etc. Plus the random factor. They're all in units of an average account, so that is normalized. Then what it does is it takes the time since it was posted and the time since it was last commented on and weights that according to the active time parameter. And then it takes the entire score there and weights that with respect to the latency number. So latency is the most important number that the user will have the most ability or the most interest in changing. So what the latency does is it allows for a sliding continuous scale of change in posts in terms of how long they were made, how long ago they were made. So with a high latency, you'll get posts that have high voting, view, and share and comment scores that are a bit older. And with a low latency, it'll rank posts higher that were made more recently, even if they have a lower score. So some of the problems with Steam and Reddit are that they have discrete sorting algorithms. So you can only pick between hot or new or trending or things like that. And you can't actually change the algorithm. But on Azera, all of our interfaces will have a sliding scale, so people will be able to adjust on a scale as to how new they want their content to be versus how highly voted it is. So ideally, users will start out with a high latency and they'll see the best content first. And then when that's all been seen, they'll move their latency a bit lower and see newer content that's still highly rated, and move it lower and lower and lower until they get to following content that's been recently created but not highly voted yet. So the ability for users to actually dynamically change that number is going to be key to the user experience of Azera. So they'll have different options for sorting these with presets if they're not too concerned about actually changing the numbers themselves. But there'll be a lot more sorting options than what you see on Facebook or Reddit or Twitter or any of those mainstream sites. In the mobile interface, in simple mode, this will be very abstracted and it won't be made completely visible to users. This will be happening in the background, and users will be able to choose it in like an options menu. But on the proper full-on desktop client, at least, all these numbers will be completely customizable. So there'll be 8 numbers for users to choose from between negative and positive 100 that'll offer billions of different possible combinations for seeing how the content is sorted and choosing what to prioritize in terms of what the user wants to see. So they might want to see things that have been highly voted and highly viewed, but not necessarily highly shared or commented on. Or if you want to see discussion, you might highly rank comments and discount the votes, views, and shares if you just want to see things that have been highly commented on. If you want to see it in a really, really fast-paced mode, you'll change the active time so that it's based on the time it was last commented on, so that every time someone comments on a post, it gets bumped up. So there'll be so many different ways to sort content, and each user will have their own preference, that it'll be nigh impossible to actually manipulate a post by adapting it to fit the algorithm, because everybody will be using a different algorithm. So it provides a much smaller attack surface against manipulating content votes to the top, which is very easy to do on Steam at trending, for example. All you have to do is pay for upvote bots, and your comment goes to the top of Steam trending. However, with all these other ways to sort content, it'll be much more difficult to actually get a post to be highly rated through a manipulative strategy. You'll have to actually have good content that people are actually engaging with, actually viewing, and it won't simply be depending on one number, and that's the number of upvotes, which Steam it does at the moment. So that's the distribution algorithm there. Having said that, we'll move on to the next topic, and that is the Xero release and revenue graphics. So recently the Azera project has released a series of graphics detailing the release stages, and we'll go through those. So those are on ezira.io. And as you can see in the preliminary ICO, there's 26 days remaining. And we'll go through the Ezira.io page. And then we get to the Ezira roadmap. So previously this was a small, very primitive diagram that had a few different targets and points and things like that. But now the Ezira roadmap consists of 5 graphics that have very detailed explanations of what exactly goes into each release and what they'll be including, and the expected time frame. So for the Pioneer release, there'll be the Ezira blockchain testnet, which is currently in development, and that'll be soon available on the alpha in its early stages, but that's not the Pioneer release yet. So we'll be building a new Steam chain and connecting it to the prototype, and when the Pioneer release is complete, it'll have all of these things. So it'll have delegated proof of stake, the prototype alpha interface, which we've got at the moment, with a bit more advanced features. It'll have IPFS file storage built into it. You'll be able to create persona accounts, just like you can on the Steam blockchain. You'll be able to access the Test Azera wallet, which will just be called Ezira, but it will not be the proper Ezira yet, it'll just be Test Azera. There'll be user-issued assets, a decentralized exchange for exchanging the user-issued assets. There'll be text, blog, and link posts. So we'll be starting off with 3 different types of posts. So a text post will not have a title. It'll just have a body of text, and it will not have... it'll essentially have the body of text, and then it'll render any links that are included as like a link reference. Like you might see on a tweet, for example. It just shows the text and it has a character limit. It'll basically be rendered like a tweet as a text post, instead of needing a title and all the other jazz. A blog post will be exactly like what you're familiar with on the Steam blockchain, that it won't be changed. It'll have a title and a body, and it'll be included. Every post will be included in one board with an infinite number of tags. And a link post will have a title and a link, and it won't have a body. So link posts don't have a body, they just have a title and a link. And when you click on the title, it'll just take you to the link. So that'll work a little bit like a Reddit style post for those who are familiar. Then there'll be board creation, so people will be able to create boards. There'll be voting on posts, but there won't be content rewards. The content rewards won't be active yet. There'll be sending of Test Azera transactions, sorting post by preset options. So some of the presets that we just described in the ranking algorithm, that'll be available on the Ezira.io interface. And there will be a blockchain explorer built into the interface, instead of having to go to a separate website. Next up is the silver release, which is the mainnet. So this is the mainnet release. And these 2 releases, the Pioneer and the Silver release, will have early access for Ezira holders. And then after that, increasing room will be made for new users to access a blockchain account. So I'll go through some of the things that the Silver release has, and that's the full node desktop client, Azera Power, and activity reward distribution. So that'll be all holders of Azera and Azera Power will earn Ezira coin rewards, and the activity reward will be distributed. Then there'll be the Alpha web interface, the mobile app Alpha, and the Genesis block of the Ezira blockchain with the share drop included. There'll be proof of work mining, so there won't be any mining in the testnet. There'll just be delegated proof of stake. Board and feed browsing, content reward distribution, business account creation, product posts. So that product post is going to be another type of post that is rendered to fit all the details of a product into it. There'll be profile account creation, which is going to be a subset of a persona account but made with a specific naming scheme. So it'll be first name, last name with a number, and it'll be used in the interface to only display the first name, last name. So it'll be a specific pattern that is used in order to get all the different Dave whatever's, all the different uses of the first name, last name to render just as first name, last name. Then there'll be account connections and private posts visible to those connections and private messaging with those connections. There'll be post sorting customization, so users will be able to change all of the different sorting algorithms that I just described before. There'll be image, video, and audio posts, so those will be posts that are specifically used for an image content. So an image post won't have a title, it'll just have an image and a shorter body. So that'll render something like an Instagram post. A video post will again have a video file, a title, and a description section. And an audio post will have an audio file, a title, and a description section. So those will be created and rendered specifically for those different types of content. And the important reason as to why this content is separated by its type is so that every application can differentiate between what the content is without needing to add its own essentially tag stamp onto it, so that different interfaces that use the same content types can render each other's content without needing to check that their tag is included in it. So if there were two different applications that allowed people to upload videos to the Ezira blockchain, and it used a video posting type, they'd be able to display each other's videos without worrying about all the other types of content, and they would not need to include their application name in the tag like they do on Steam at the moment. So for example, if you have DTube, for example, they include the DTube tag so that they only show posts that are made on DTube, but that's a bit of a hack way of doing it. So we'll be having different types of content to make sure that all applications can have consistent standards when they display different types of content. Moving forward, there's event creation, supernode reward, content reward beneficiaries like there is on Steam at the moment. The supernode network will reward IPFS node holders. Smart coins will be able to be made and collateralized with a Ezira coin. That'll work the same way that bitshares smart coins work. There'll be group creation in the three different types that I just described before. The marketing, advocacy, and development reward pools will open for voting. And if you would like to be a member of those reward pools, then I would recommend campaigning to the Ezira community for votes to be an Ezira marketer, an advocate, or a developer. There'll be content management system, so that includes moderators being able to move posts to the deleted section, and for all users to be able to add tags to posts in order to have them potentially filtered from interfaces. Lastly, there'll be Ezira credit issuance, which is used to issue debt against the revenue of the Ezira network by the Ezira main account. Moving on to the gold release, I'll go a bit faster because we're taking a little while. There'll be membership assets. This is where all the revenue streams come in. Membership assets, premium content, post-promotion, marketplace mediation, the account referral revenue distribution, the network revenue distribution system, Ezira Stealth creation and transactions, anonymous posting with Ezira Stealth content rewards. The mobile app will have NFC-based payments. The Community Pioneer distribution will take place, rewarding 50 of the top users. Every account will get a multi-currency HD or hierarchically deterministic wallet for the major currencies, similar to a Jax style wallet, but based off of your Azera account. So essentially, when you import your Azera account, you'll be able to directly import all of the other wallets that are associated with the Azera account and have a stream of wallets being created off of those keys and things like that. There'll be the featured page, the recommended posts in the sidebar of different content types. There'll be full API functionality for integration by third-party developers. Ezira DEX cryptocurrency gateway assets, so those will be exchange assets that are used and maintained by the Ezira team. In the company of Ezira DEX, it'll be a separate company to run those gateway assets. But those gateway assets will be created for exchanging things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash and bitshares. And there'll be community project funding. So the community account will be accepting funding proposals, and that receives 5% of all issued Azera coin. The complete mainnet will include the last remaining features. So those are account verification for proving that a profile account is who it says it is. Subscription assets, peer-to-peer lending, marketplace credit lines. The decentralized exchange will have margin trading enabled, and there will be option assets, predictive split assets, liquidity array assets using the Bancor liquidity formula, community issued assets, so that'll be either groups or boards being able to issue their own asset and distribute them to the content creators within their community. Advanced Ezira DEX orders like stop loss orders and fill or kill orders, all that sort of thing. So anything that you'd see on a high level exchange, highly technical exchange for advanced traders. Things like staggered orders, things like take gain, or not a take gain, mainly stop loss orders will trigger their smart contract deployment. Recurring payments and live stream posts will be coming in the the platinum release rather. Lastly, in the diamond release, there's no changes to the Ezira blockchain, but this is mostly the ecosystem evolving. So in the last phase of the project, before it starts to be taken over by elected development team members, will be the application of the executive board elections. So there'll be an on-chain election for all the executive board positions. We'll bring in Ezira Pay Fiat Gateway assets, the Ezira Investment Fund, which will be a Bancor pool of liquidity that holds a stake in Ezira-sponsored businesses. There'll be the founding of these Ezira consortium businesses that are in the business and application case. Then there'll be Ezira credit-funded projects, including mass market outreach, exchange listing campaigns, infrastructure stress testing, and penetration testing. And we will work with code auditors to obtain a formal proof of completeness and high assurance of code-based security. We'll release open-source automated DEX trading software along the lines of the DEX trading software that has been used on the bitshares blockchain that's been released, called DEXBot, something along those lines. We'll have Ezira consortium admissions for businesses and white labeling solutions for making an Ezira web application based on a fork of Ezira.io, and an application solution for forking the Ezira mobile wallet for a specific store or a specific board or a specific asset to focus on one community point of interaction. And there'll be another application made for point of sale merchants to be able to accept Ezira payments in any of the Ezira based cryptocurrencies. So that was pretty long, but that's the entire Ezira roadmap, which is now explained over the course of 5 graphics with tentative timelines on a 6-monthly upgrade cycle. So those timelines will certainly change either up or down depending on how fast the Azera project can fundraise and grow in terms of development team. But that is where it stands at the moment. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about this week is the Azera revenue graphic. So the Azera revenue graphic is also now on the website under the investment section. So this is the first thing that new investors will now be seeing, and that is the revenue model graphic, which explains very, very basically the following. It describes the 6 different revenue streams, and they are memberships, promoted posts, decentralized exchange fees, premium content fees, marketplace fees, and lending interest fees. It shows how there are some split outs of these revenue streams before they are ingested by the network. So 15% of memberships goes to Azera premium partners, 50% of promoted post income goes to the interfaces and the supernodes that facilitate that. Premium content fees get split out to supernodes that facilitate the distribution of encryption keys to actually make sure that that is encrypted and to protect it from arbitrary distribution for free, because it is on IPFS and it does rely on the supernodes to actually enforce the rules of who can get access to those keys. So they have to be incentivized to behave correctly. The marketplace fees, again, they have a distribution to the mediators that facilitate the marketplace, and both DEX fees and lending interest fees don't have any split outs. Those Azera coin funds, or those funds in whatever currency is used for these, which should be Azera coin for all of these, so that Azera coin gets distributed into network revenue. And this incoming network revenue stream is split out to the registrar of the account in terms of 7.5%. And if the account has a referrer, which it almost certainly will, so there's going to be an invitation code where you can input the referrer in order to get a free month of silver membership from the Azera main account. So we'll be incentivizing people to use their invitation codes and refer new users. They will both be getting an Azera membership of 1 month for free per referral invite. There'll be obviously terms and conditions, or not terms and conditions, but protocols in place to prevent abuse. So there will be some strings attached to that, but essentially if you use an invitation code from a referrer, there will be a free silver membership for 1 month. Then 15% will be going to the governance address for each account, and this is set by default as an address that's specified by the account that creates it, and this address can be changed. So the registrar and the referrer are permanent, and the governance address can be changed. So Azera accounts that are made on Azera.io will be specifying the Azera main account and the community account as the governance addresses by default, and all users will be able to change that accordingly to who they want to pay this 15% distribution to for governance. That might be charities, that might be national governments that make Azera accounts, and it may well be the Azera burn address if they want to contribute that value to the buy and burn to a greater extent. So that's the Azera revenue graphic, and that makes it very visually clear where Azera's incoming revenue is sourced from. So now what we'll do is we will go to any questions that anyone has about the topics that we just discussed there. So does anyone have any questions about what we just talked about? So the roadmap, the revenue graphic, and what I'll do is I'll just post them in the chat here so you all can see them. Okay, so here's all of the graphics for everybody to see. So these are all available on Azera.io in the main home section and in the investment section. So this is a lot more visually clear about some of the important parts of the Azera project, for those of you who haven't read the white paper. So all this information is in the white paper, but this makes it nice and clear. Okay, we have a question from Genki, and he asks, can you explain how buy and burn helps the Azzurri users? That's a great question, Genki. So, essentially, a buy and burn is what happens when a cryptocurrency is destroyed. So, for example, imagine if there was a company that had people pay for its products by provably destroying units of an asset that they issue. So in order to get a company's products, you have to destroy its asset, which makes that asset more scarce. So by removing some of it from the supply, it means that it was initially bought from the market and that it's no longer going to be sold on the market, so it's been destroyed. So in a simple way, it's a way to provide the value of that transaction to everyone who holds that asset by making it more scarce and more expensive, by buying it up off the market first, so that increases the price when it's bought, and then when it's destroyed, it's not sold, so it's therefore removed from the supply and the coin becomes more scarce. So by extension, when Ezira coin is issued, that is essentially paying a share of this incoming revenue to those users. So people who hold Azera and people who hold Ezira coin benefit from the buy and burn, because it is destroyed from the supply, which increases the price and increases the demand. So we have Antonio Montaliva, who is asking, what is the difference between Azera and Ezira coin? That's a great question that we discussed last week. And the main answer is that there is a limited supply of Azera, which is spelled with capital letters, and that limited supply is 10 million, and that's issued to preliminary, main, and annual ICO contributors, and it's held by a few reserve accounts as well. So that's essentially the ownership of the protocol represented by that, because that earns an ongoing revenue stream from the Azera holder reward when those accounts are active. And Azera coin is an asset that is separate from Azera, but also holds voting power when it is vested into Azera power. So Azera coin is comparable to Steam in that it can be locked up and vested to hold voting power, and it earns Steam holder. It earns Azera power interest essentially, so that when it's vested, it earns an interest rate depending on the amount that's vested. So both assets hold voting power, but Azera coin is issued at a rate of 10 million per year every year, and that rate is constant and fixed. So essentially, Azera coin is distributed to everyone who contributes to the protocol to represent revenue, and Azera, the asset, represents ownership over the protocol. So they both hold voting power, and they have different ways of limiting access to the voting power and the earning potential of the assets. So Azera is always liquid, but it takes 4 weeks to charge up its full earning potential and its voting potential, whereas Azera coin is the reverse. It can be immediately vested for full rewards and full voting power, but it takes at least 4 weeks to divest. So it depends whether you want to have an immediate voting power but be illiquid afterwards, or have it liquid voting power but have to wait in order to charge it up. So those are the two different assets that are used on the Azera blockchain. So they're for two different purposes. One is for one has an open supply that can be adjusted with network demand, and the other one has a fixed supply that earns a return based on those who hold it. So I hope that answers your question. Does anyone have any other questions? You're welcome, Antonio. Anyone have any other questions today before we move on? Very good, thank you, John. Okay, in that case, we will move on to this week's weekly auction. So every week, the Ezira project has an auction of 10,000 Ezira that is distributed proportionally between all of the bidders to the Ezira account. This auction closes 1 hour after each Ezira Hangout, and the Ezira is distributed to the bidders a few hours, up to about 12 hours after the auction is closed. So we wait to make sure that there are no late bidders, but it tentatively closes 1 hour after each Ezira Hangout. So please get it in relatively shortly to be included in this week's auction. So over 500 bitUSD worth of value, and I'm pretty sure that number's gone up, has been contributed this week already. So take advantage of the last few opportunities to get Azera before the preliminary ICO closes on September the 1st. So after September the 1st, there will be no more new Azera issued, and the funding round will close. It will be closing on the 1st of September, which means that the only way to get Azera after that point will be to buy it up off the market. So the Azera supply will be fixed after the 1st of September, and all remaining Azera on the Azera main account will be sent back to the reserve pool, and whenever Azera does competitions, we will be buying the Azera back off of the market and distributing it like that. So you can now purchase Azera below its current market price by sending bitshares or bitUSD to Azera on bitshares, or there is also a Bitcoin and Ethereum address that will be displayed on the screen, and that will be also included in the YouTube video description and in the Telegram channel for Azera after this hangout's finished. So to send Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can send it to the address that is on the screen at the moment, and that will be included for copy pasting purposes on the Discord, the Telegram, and on the YouTube video. So this week's weekly auction, we've had a few bids already. We've had some contributions from quite a few accounts. There's been so our biggest bid so far has been Doog with 1,500 bitshares. Thank you, Doog. We've had Boney 1994 with 100 bitshares. We've had TBCA Time 1212 with 1,000 bitshares. So the bids are flowing in, and it's your opportunity to get some Azera below its current market price by sending bitshares to the Azera main account, or alternatively Bitcoin or Ethereum, which gets deposited into Bitcoin's account via OpenLedger. So next up we'll go to the competition for this week. So this week's Twitter competition had people answering the question, who will be your first connection on Azera and why? So we will decide the winner of that competition now. So in order to be valid, the entries had to be posted into the competition's Discord, And we've had quite a few entries here. Look at this. First post on Azera. That was last week. First connection. So we have one from Antonio, one from Steam Dan, and one from Teresa Rod, and from Mariana. So let's take a look and see which one had the most likes and retweets. Okay, we have Mariana, who said, my first Azera connection will be with a team of friends on Discord. Surely together we will invent great community projects. Fantastic, Mariana. Sort of dodging the question a little bit, but I'll allow it. A team of friends. Yeah, maybe it's too hard to pick just one. Next up, so that post got 161 engagements. And next up we have Teresa, who said, my first Ezira connection will be with my Twitter friends La Divina Diva, La Perez Perdomo, and Lyrical Man, and all my followers who find many benefits in this incredible social network. With 30 engagements. Thank you, Teresa. And next we have Daniel Vasquez, who says, my first Azera connection will be Beyond Bitcoin Cash. Beyond Bitcoin Cash. Because it's a perfect way to empower and build up a decentralized community focusing on providing values, education, and quality content to everyone. With 13 engagements. And last but not least, we have Jesus Antonio, who says, my first Azera connection will be with Dan Vell, because he has been teaching me about Azera in the Hispanic community, and he is a very nice person. And it looks like we have a winner with 200 and 203 engagements. Yep, 203 if I'm reading that correctly. Yep, 203. That means this week's winner is Jesus Antonio, who was definitely in the Discord. There it is. Jesus Antonio is our winner for this week, with Antonio Montaliva as the bitshares address. Congratulations, Antonio, and he is here in Discord, so that increases the winnings potential. So first we'll need to work out 5% of the balance. So the prize is 200 Azera plus 100 if present, and another 5% of the total balance. And yeah, that's what I thought. Antonio won last week, so this week he has 310 to be compounding onwards. So that's 310. So Antonio's winnings this week are 300 plus 0.05 times 310. Which brings his winnings to 315.5 Azera. 315.5 Azera. So that's an extra 15 Azera from the multiplicative bonus there. So that's 315.5 Azera to Antonio Montaliva. Congratulations, Antonio, winner of Twitter competition 3. Competition 3. Very good. Congratulations, Antonio. Okay, so now we have the new competition. It's pretty similar to the last competition because these competitions have been very, very powerful for the Azera project on Twitter. So we'll be moving in with a new competition this week. And it's no surprise that it is another Twitter competition. So number 4, Twitter competition number 4 is post a tweet answering the question, what is the first board you will create on Azera and why? In one sentence. So on Azera, boards are spelled using the caret name, the greater than symbol, like the sideways arrow first, and then their name is in capital case. So for example, if the board was called like this, they go sideways arrow and then capital case. So if there was a board called Azzurri users, it would look like that. And then that's essentially, when you write it like that, will render as a link to that board. Same as like when you type a tag. When you type a tag on most websites, it links to a search of that tag. Azera will work very similarly, except with boards. So on Reddit, you might be familiar with an R notation or R Azera, like that. On Azera, the board notation will be a sideways arrow, and that will link to that board. So that's in the technical manual. A little bit of stuff that'll be coming out into the application when it is created. So the first board that you would like to create is this week's Twitter question. So it can be any topic you want, and we'll see who can come up with some creative answers. So, and why is a good question to be asking. So as usual, include the tags for hashtag Azera and @Azera Network, and include a link to the Azera Telegram and Discord, and link your posts in the competitions Discord with your bitshares address to enter. And the tweet with the most likes and retweets on Twitter will win 200 Azera plus 5% of their total Azera holdings. The winner will be announced in next week's Hangout, and if the winner is present in next week's Hangout, like Antonio was this week, they will win a bonus 100 Azera. The first valid entry, starting as of right now, will win 10 bonus Azera when it is created. And it'll also be linked in the Ezira Hangout thread. So remember to include the caret notation, and if it's multiple words, it should be using capital case. So capital first letter, and then capital for each of the start of the word. Each of the start of the word letters. So that's pretty much the competition sorted out there. And last up this week, we'll have any general discussion. Does anyone have any questions or topics that they want to bring up for this week's general discussion? So any open questions that we have, and you can email me at harrison@azera.io for any other queries, team role applications, proposals, or business matters. And you can join the Azera Telegram channel at www.t.me/Azera Network. You can also email me to get the template for applying to be a witness on the Azera blockchain. And then you can make that post to the Steam blockchain for your witness proposal. So if you would like to be an Azera witness, then it is a good idea to start campaigning to the community, to the holders of Azera who will be voting for you. And it's also a good idea to get a bit of Azera yourself so that you can have a bit of voting power at the start of the network. So with that said, we'll open the board up to some questions. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we talked about or the Azera project in general? In that case, if no one has any questions, then we will wrap up this week's Ezira Hangout. So thank you all for everyone who is watching live on YouTube, and for everyone who enjoyed this week's Hangout. Remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Azera YouTube channel for more videos about the Azera project that come out in the future, and for these Hangouts every week to be broadcast live. If you're watching this, please consider sharing it with your network, getting the word out about the Azera project. The Azera project depends on all of us coming together to grow this network into the powerful force that we know it can be for freedom in this world. Because cryptocurrency is the most powerful step for freedom that we have had in several generations. It is a step bigger than the internet in many ways, because it allows us to, for the first time in human history, have scarcity of anything, digitally enforced scarcity. We have got a technology that was not even predicted in Star Trek, for example. In Star Trek they had, for example, gold pressed latinum was the idea of Star Trek that was used by the Ferengi, used because it was scarce, because it couldn't be replicated. We have something that is more advanced than the most advanced mechanism of money designed in Star Trek right now, and I think that's amazing. So with that said, I think we'll finish this week's Ezira Hangout. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next week for next week's Ezira Hangout number 19. So thank you all, and good night. And remember, together we will build the next world. Thank you.